Greetings, greetings, greetings. Today we're continuing the read of Abeni's song written by Djeli Clark. Last chapter, chapter 12, we were introduced to two new spirits, and it's a testimony of Abeni's connection to the light, her connection to Asha, who is a spiritual warrior on the side of light. If you recall in past chapters, when Auntie Asha would go into spiritual warfare, she's on the side of light, bringing light, and she's fighting against darkness and harming people and just having people think in that one way, and just if they don't think your way, you just like destroy everything about them and or use them to further your own agenda. So Auntie Asha is on the side of light, and because Abeni is connected to that spirit that is Asha, they are drawing other spirits to them. Now the first one they drew to them, which was the porcupine is sweet, but she's a little scared of her own shadow, and she's just out there singing and dancing, and she's usually just with other porcupine spirits like her. But because she got separated from her people, her group, her family, she's willing to go along on their journey and maybe find her people again. Everybody wants to be with their people, right? Divinely aligned. And then along their journey, they hear this cry, and then they follow the light inside of them, the goodwill to help others and not to harm others. And unfortunately, they met up with some human beings who assumed that because Asha was connected to the spirit and trying to help the spirit, that she was a negative thing, a witch. And then, of course, they had to fight. The good thing is she's fighting on the side of goodness. So even though the second spirit that they met up, well, actually the third, because the Black Panther spirit is the third spirit that Abeni's with, even though she doesn't like mortals and she would rather not deal with mortals, she does have respect for the spirit of light that is within Asha. And so she agrees to follow them. So now there's 4 of them. They're on this journey. They have faced their first battle, and they fought well together. And so they're building a bond where everybody is giving, everybody is receiving, everybody is supportive. They've created a new type of tribe. And so they're going forward into their journey. Now, as we get to chapter 13, Bush Baby, that's the title of it. And that might sound okay, but the bush can be complicated, to say the least. So thankfully it's 4 of them. Not one of them is out there facing any of these things alone. And together, I think they'll make it through. Not without challenges, though. Even with them being spirits, they all need each other. Their strengths and their dedication to the journey. Let's get into it. The next few days made Abeni wonder if her hopes had been misplaced. Zania and Naomi fussed constantly about just everything. When the porcupine girl tried to tell one of her stories, Zania cut in to point out where she was wrong. They argued about the names of plants and animals. They fought over where to sleep at night. The 2 even bickered over the shapes of clouds in the sky. For Abeni, it was all exhausting. She tried her best to steer clear of the 2 when they argued, not taking sides. Both of these girls were spirits with magical powers she didn't understand. She wasn't about to get between them. Her mother used to warn that when elephants argued, mice could get trampled. The source of the trouble wasn't hard to figure out. Zania. There was no way to say it nicely, but the Panther girl was not easy to get along with. She was haughty, surly, quick to anger, and just overall impolite. Not even that silly Sowoki had been this bad. About the only person she was nice to was Asha. The rest of them she seemed to just tolerate. Abeni had never met anyone so sure of themselves. It was admirable, in a way, but also very irritating. "We panther spirits are strong," she said to Abeni as they walked. "Do you know how fast a panther spirit can run? We're feared because we're fierce." The only thing Zania liked more than bragging about panther spirits was complaining about mortals. "Mortals get sick," she would say. "Mortals are greedy. Mortals lie. Mortals steal from each other and even kill other mortals." Abeni had no idea how many mortals, people, the Panther Girl had ever met, but it seemed impossible to change her mind. Abeni didn't think Zania even realized she was being insulting. "I'm a mortal, you know," she pointed out after one of the Panther Girl's tirades. Zania only nodded. "Then you know what I'm saying is true." Despite the girl's difficult nature, Abeni did her best to get along. She hadn't been around other children since her village. Foamy had been her best friend. The two could talk about anything. Now she felt awkward, like she had to learn how to talk to other children her age all over again. Then again, these two weren't her age. Not really. When Abeni mentioned in passing that she'd counted 13 harvest seasons, Zania shrugged it off. "I have counted 80 of your harvest seasons," she replied casually. Abeni stopped in her tracks, staring. 80? The Panther Girl yawned to show sharp teeth. "Give or take a season." When she turned to Naomi, the Porcupine Girl shrugged as well, munching on some flower petals. "I think I've counted 60 or maybe 70. I forget." Abeni gaped at them both. "Is this a trick? The two of you can't be that old." Zania rolled her eyes. "We are spirits. We do not age like mortals whose lives are as brief as flies." The Panther Girl snickered, eyeing Abeni as if looking for a response. She didn't take the bait, turning to Naomi instead. "If you're so old, why do you still look like girls? My age." The Porcupine Girl thought on this for a moment. "Maybe since spirits live for such a long time, we stay one age for a very long time. Or maybe mortals don't stay the same age long enough. My father thinks it's a shame that mortals have such short lives. He says if you lived longer, you wouldn't be so excitable. You'd fight less and dance more." Abeni bit back a smile. Let the Porcupine Girl tell it. Dancing solved everything. "Asha was an old woman once," she related. If the two found anything odd about an old woman turning younger, they didn't show it. "Is that going to happen to you? Will you grow old and then start over?" "Of course not," Zania answered. "All spirits aren't the same." Abeni wanted to reply that neither were mortals, but she held her tongue. "She's right," Naomi said. "Asha is different from any spirit I've ever met." "How?" Abeni asked. She looked to the little girl who skipped along ahead. "She's old," Zania said. "The oldest spirit I've ever encountered. It is a strange thing that she has chosen you for a guardian. Panther spirits, of course, do not need such things, but some spirits choose mortals to look after them. Perhaps they are a tree or a pond that requires tending, or they are spirits too weak to defend themselves. Others involve themselves in mortal affairs." She said this with a particular distaste. "They grant power to mortals on their behalf. making them great wielders of magic or warriors. Have you been given such? Abeni shook her head. All I have is a staff, a straw man's hat, and a magic bag. Zania snorted. As I said, you are a strange guardian. That was how their first 2 days went. Bits of conversation where Abeni tried to learn as much as she could between Naomi and Zania's never-ending bickering. She tried to make the best of things, which meant helping everyone get along. One night, as they sat to eat, she averted an emerging spat over where the sun traveled when it set by quickly changing subjects. Zania, where do panther spirits come from? The panther girl turned to her, orange eyes flickering annoyance at the interruption of a good argument. Everywhere. We roam as we please. Abeni tried not to grimace as the girl prepared her meal. Zania caught her own food, but she refused to cook it, balking at what she called burnt meat. Instead, she ate everything raw. As Abeni watched, the panther girl used the sharp claw on a forefinger to slice open the belly of a hare. She sank sharp teeth into it, ripping away pieces that she gulped down. Disgusting, Naomi said, crunching away at snails. Zania swallowed, wiping away blood on her cheek with the back of her hand. Leaning forward, she looked ready to reply something, but Abeni hurriedly stepped in again. So then, you've seen a lot of the world, she asked. Zania sat back, forgetting the porcupine girl and chewing. I've seen some. My sisters move often. Mother doesn't stay in one place long. You have a mother? Zania gave her a flat look. Doesn't everyone? How many sisters do you have? Abeni tried. She snatched a bit of raw hair from Asha, who was set to bite into it. Many, Zania replied. I never had a sister, Abeni said. I had a brother. Do you have any brothers? The panther girl laughed. It is only my mother and sisters. All panther spirits are women and girls. Abeni's eyebrows rose in surprise. No men? No boys? Not even a father? You should ask her about her father, Naomi muttered. Zania's eyes narrowed to slits as she and the porcupine girl stared at each other quietly. But she soon turned back to Abeni with a lopsided grin. Not even a father, she repeated. Abeni glanced to Naomi, who had gone back to her snails, now sucking out the insides. She wanted to ask more, but didn't want this to become an argument, so she turned the topic to something she really wanted to know. Out there, in the world, have you ever seen ghost ships? She cast a glance to Asha, who didn't appear to be paying them much mind. No, Zania said, but I've heard of them. Abeni sat up, her heart thumping. You have? Crafts sailed by wraiths from across the sea, the panther girl replied. Mortals who serve the witch priest barter other mortals to the wraiths. Do you know where they take them? Across the sea, I think, the panther girl said as if she were dense. But why? Abeni pressed. She shrugged. Who is to say? Mortal doings are not my concern. What about storm women or a man in a goat horn mask? Zania frowned, and Abeni realized she was talking and breathing fast. The only goats I've come across were those good for eating. And with that, the panther girl turned away, seeming bored with the conversation. Abeni fell back, quiet. She wanted to ask so much more. Zania was the first person other than Asha who had spoken of ghost ships. She would have to work on coaxing the panther girl to recount every bit she knew. There might be a clue to what became of her village buried in there somewhere. For the next few days, Asha led them through a part of the forest where the land was no longer even, rising and falling as they walked. Sometimes they were made to cross steep ravines, scrambling down carefully, and then, pulling themselves up on the other side by fleshy tree roots that grew up out of the ground. Other places sloped so high it felt like they were walking sideways to climb them. They had to be careful in places where the land dropped off completely, leading down into dark crevices. They encountered no more people and no signs of villages, which was for the best, given Zania's fondness for goats. It was all exhausting, at least for Abeni, who had to stop and drink water often. Each time she did so, Zania muttered about the softness of mortals. It was at the end of a morning of long walking that Abeni found a large rock to sit on. Its smooth surface was covered in green moss that was cool and soft beneath her. She sipped water from her gourd and wiped sweat from her brow. As usual, Zania stood by, impatient, arms folded and grumbling. Naomi, meanwhile, chattered on about some singing frogs. Asha lay beside her, watching a red caterpillar inch its way across the rock. Abeni was nodding absently to Naomi, trying to ignore Zania while keeping an eye on Asha, when she glimpsed something moving nearby. A flash of bright green, and it looked big. It was hidden behind a thick tangle of trees that grew up like a wall. Returning the water gourd to her bag, she got up and walked closer. The trees were so knotted together that she had to search for an opening to fit through. When she finally managed to push her way inside, she gaped. It was a garden of flowers, about the biggest flowers she'd ever seen. The bright green she had glimpsed turned out to be a stem, nearly as thick as she was. She craned her neck to follow its length. As it extended, up, up, up into the air to end in a rounded sky blue bulb. She gawped at the size of the thing, and it wasn't alone. Dozens of the giant flowers spread out across a vast clearing. Their bright green stems swayed in the breeze, rocking immense bulbs back and forth. Abeni let out a breath of awe. They were beautiful. "What are those?" Naomi asked. The porcupine girl had followed her into the hidden garden and now peeked curiously over her shoulder. "I don't know," Abeni answered. She wondered what those bulbs looked like when they opened fully. "Where are you two going?" Zania shouted. "I found something," Abeni called back. "Asha, come look." Both girls emerged through the tangle of trees into the garden. "You stopped for flowers?" Zania asked, staring up at the things. "Not just any flowers," Abeni said. "Look at the size of them." The panther girl sniffed and wrinkled her nose. "They smell funny." Abeni inhaled a sweet tickling scent. "They smell beautiful. Do you know what they are, Asha?" The little girl didn't answer, her gaze fixed intently on the strange flower. "Asha?" Abeni asked again. "We should leave," she said suddenly. Her small face looked troubled. "What's wrong?" Abeni asked. Asha shook her head. "This isn't the way we're supposed to go." "I agree," Zania put in. She eyed the flowers like she expected them to bite. "Something about this place doesn't feel right or smell right." Abeni looked at the two and then back at the flowers. She didn't feel anything, and they smelled wonderful. But she knew better than to ignore Asha's warnings. "Fine," she said. "Maybe we'll see some again." As the others walked away, she lingered to look out at the flowers one last time. Putting a hand to a giant stem, she touched its smooth surface before turning to go. A sudden tremor shook the plant, making her jerk her hand back. It traveled up its length until reaching the top, setting the bulb to shaking. The green stem began to curve and bend, dipping low until the giant blue bulb hovered right in front of her. Abeni has such a bad habit of being way too curious in situations where it can be dangerous. Like, I know she's young. I know she's only 13. But you got to think about your environment. And the fact that Asha is the oldest spirit there, she's leading them through the forest. She immediately told them, nah, she's going on her intuition. She might not know all the things old Asha knew, but her intuition is still there at the core of her spirit being. So when she said it didn't feel right, followed by Zania co-signing that it didn't feel right, they should have immediately turned around and got up out of there. Sometimes we don't need to know. If they would have got up out of there without touching anything, she might have never known that the flower would move when she touched it or whatever's about to happen. But some things we don't need to know. When Spirit tells us to leave something alone, we need to leave it alone. Obedience is a blessing. But sometimes we think being obedient is like being restricted or we're not allowed. We don't need to do everything. Everything is not okay. Everything shouldn't be touched or messed with, especially that garden was hidden. She had to go through all kinds of things. It wasn't meant for her to see. It definitely wasn't meant for her to touch. So this doesn't feel like it's going to end up good. Just like when she went behind them doors and found the magic pots. And even though she got connected to a magic pot that told her the possibilities of her future, she wasn't satisfied with that. She had to go further and further and further, and she drank all of that stuff and almost got stuck with all that magic in her belly. Thankfully, older Asha was able to save her, but young Asha's a little girl now. She's not at her full power level. So she should have just listened to what she told her. Not do that extra. Oh, that extra. Why did she touch the flower? As human beings, we get so curious, too curious for our own good sometimes. We have to learn when your intuition is telling you not to do something, pay attention to that. So although Abeni's intuition didn't warn her, she literally has her spirit guide right there letting her know. So although she wasn't aware of the danger, her spirit guide let her know clearly, we don't belong here, let's go. She gonna sit up there and touch the daggone flower. Got on my daggone nerves. Let's see what happened. As Abeni watched in amazement, the tightly wrapped petals broke apart, opening and spreading wide. Lying in the bed of the giant flower was a creature. It was as big as she was, with a body covered in thick orange-brown fur and bands of white around its arms and legs. Its head was huge, round like a monkey's but with whiskers and oversized pointed ears of a cat. They twitched from beneath shaggy hair as a small black nose wrinkled and a faint yawn escaped a broad mouth. She thought the thing might have been sleeping, but now it was coming awake. Two large eyes that took up much of its face slowly parted, and deep black pools ringed with brown stared out. They blinked lazily, fixing on her. Then, without warning, the creature began to cry. Abeni jumped back. Crying? No, it was screaming at the top of its lungs, and it sounded like, of all things, a baby, only so loud it was nearly deafening. The wailing quickly became a shriek, and she had to cover her ears. "Sorry," she tried. "I didn't mean to wake you up." But the thing just cried louder, tossing its head and throwing a fit. "What's happening?" Zania called. "I don't know," Abeni began. She could barely hear herself above the screams. She bent down and tried to quiet it. "Shh, don't cry," she pleaded. As she got closer, the creature's wail faltered, and it went suddenly still. She smiled with relief. "See there? Nothing to be upset," her words cut off as the creature suddenly leapt up, its broad mouth open wide. She stumbled back, fearing it was going to bite her, but instead it drew a deep breath. Abeni was tugged forward and felt herself held fast, her mouth frozen open in a cry that never came. The creature inhaled, and a trail of white vapor left her mouth to enter its own. It did so again, sucking the air right out of her. It hurt like her chest was on fire, but she couldn't break away. She couldn't even scream. She remained locked with it, unable to free herself. Suddenly, hands grabbed at her. Yanking her away, she fell back, tumbling to the ground. She found Zania and Naomi sprawled out beside her. She scrambled from atop them, bending over and coughing harshly. "Abeni!" Asha cried. The girl had a small hand to her cheek. "Are you okay?" Abeni took in gulps of air. "I think so," she croaked. Or at least that's what she intended. Instead, an odd wailing came. "What was that?" she tried, but her mouth only made a shrieking cry like a baby. She clutched at her throat. What was happening? "Delicious," a voice said. Abeni froze. That was her voice. Turning, she stared at the creature in the flower. It was rising, pushing up from the petals to stand. Licking its lips, it smiled. "You taste absolutely delicious." Abeni gasped. The creature had her voice. It sounded just like her. Seeing her stricken face, it laughed her laugh from its broad mouth. "Oh no," Asha said. "A bush baby," Zania growled. She'd gotten to her feet, baring sharp teeth at the creature. "Silly mortal, you woke up a bush baby." Abeni stared in confusion. "A bush what?" "It stole your voice," the panther girl said. "Don't you stupid mortals know better than getting close to a bush baby?" Abeni wanted to yell back at the girl. They could talk about how stupid she was later. Right now, she just wanted her voice back. "Abeni," Naomi cried in alarm. "Your ears!" Abeni put hands up to her ears and squealed. These weren't her ears. They were big, pointed, and furry. She could even twitch them. Hearing a laugh, she turned to the bush baby and inhaled in horror. The thing's ears had changed into her own. "Mine now," it teased in a sing-song. "Oh, nice arms, too." As it lifted two brown-skinned arms, Abeni lifted her own to find two long, shaggy things that ended in claws. She fought not to scream. "Bush babies don't just steal your voice," Zania said. "They steal you, all of you. When the change is complete, you'll be a bush baby, and it'll have your body." She glanced up to the giant plants. "Hope you like living in a flower." The very thought brought Abeni to action. She bounded up, lunging for the bush baby, but she didn't get far. Stumbling on her own feet, the creature laughed, leaping from the flower on sturdy brown legs. Abeni looked down. Sure enough, her legs were now short, stumpy, furry things that ended in a pair of big feet with toes that curled. "Give those back," she yelled, only managing to wail louder. The bush baby whooped. "What was that? Can't understand a thing. Bush baby got your tongue?" It tittered at its own joke. "The best part is that I don't just get the body, I get what you keep in here, too." It tapped the side of its head, mostly her head now. "You've got some tasty memories." Abeni scowled at the thought of this creature rummaging through her memories. "Auntie Awami and Awomi," the bush baby murmured. "Mother and father and brother. For me, a harvest festival. That looks fun. Oh, what's this? Secret things. Things you haven't even told your new friends about." Abeni stiffened. Those were hers. It had no right Storm women, the bush baby said. And a man in goat horns with a flute. Scary. Oh dear, they took everyone in your village away, left you all alone, and... It stopped, swinging its gaze to Asha. So that's who you are, the bush baby said. Now there's a surprise. Do you know he's looking for you? Oh, yes. He didn't believe a fire could end you so easy. Abeni frowned in confusion. He? Who was the creature talking about? As if hearing her thoughts, it turned to smile her own smile back at her. Oh, you know who he is. You've seen his banner. You keep one hidden in that bag. It's all here with me in your memories. One single flame to set the world afire. Abeni's insides went cold in horror. The witch priest. I hear him day and night, the bush baby said, even when I slept. He calls us to him. But we're not fighters. We have no wish to join his war. Still, what reward might I get when I give him what he wants? The bush baby leapt in a flash. Bounding past the others, it grabbed hold of Asha. The girl squealed as she was picked up, and then they were speeding away. There was a piercing cry that Abeni didn't recognize at first as her own voice. She tried to yell Asha's name, but there was only a shriek. With determination, she pushed back up to her feet and managed to stand. Her first steps were wobbly, but after a few tries, she stumbled into a run. Snatching up her staff, she tried to hold it between her new claws and tore after them. The bush baby was fast, faster with her legs than she had ever been. It zipped away, ducking between the thick green stems and leaving echoing laughter in its wake. It was stronger, too, carrying Asha as if she were just a doll. The girl cried out, but didn't seem able to break free. Luckily, Abeni was getting a handle on her new body. The bush baby's short legs couldn't run very fast, but they could jump. The first time she tried, she was surprised when she went sailing high and landed again on her feet, those long curling toes clutching the ground. Her eyes had grown too and could see a long way. She easily made out the bush baby in the distance, her stolen body appearing every now and again between the maze of giant flowers. Zania now ran along beside her, changing to panther form and joining the chase. Still, the bush baby was hard to catch. At one point, they got close enough for Zania to pounce, but it slipped out of her way, laughing as the panther girl went sliding and tumbling. Abeni tried too, using her new legs to make terrific leaps. She almost landed right on top of the creature once, but it grabbed onto a giant green stem with one hand and swung about, holding onto Asha and using the momentum to sling away. It landed nimbly, heading back the way they had come. Turning to look at them, it grinned and stuck out a tongue at Abeni just before it unexpectedly stumbled. The bush baby let out a sharp squeak as it flew into the air, flipping end over end. Asha flew from its grip, and the two came tumbling down, bouncing across the forest floor several times before coming to a stop. Abeni winced at the fall, hoping neither Asha or her own stolen body had been hurt. An explosion of pink mist revealed Naomi with a leg stuck out. She'd tripped the thing. Prickly got it, Asha cheered. Abeni reminded herself to give the porcupine girl a big but careful hug. The dazed bush baby sat up, preparing to run, but Abeni leapt high, letting her new legs carry her, and landed right beside it. Before the creature could stand, she knocked it back down. Give me back my body, she demanded. Whatever she sounded like, the anger in her voice was clear enough. The bush baby looked up with defiant eyes, her eyes, and a tight-lipped smile. She yelled again, but it didn't budge. Zania trotted up beside them, changing back into the panther girl and picking pieces of the forest floor from her hair. It won't open its mouth, she said. Not before the change is complete. It knows once it has all of you, there's no going back. Abeni glared down at the creature. It smiled wider, not showing a shred of teeth. Zania was right. It wouldn't open its mouth now, not even to gloat. It just had to wait her out. She looked down at her body. Most of it was furry now. Only her hair and nose were left, and soon they'd be gone too. Frantic, she shook the bush baby, fearful at the same time she might injure her body. It seemed to know this, and smiled up smugly. Nearing her wit's end, Abeni felt a hand touch her shoulder. She turned, worry painted on her furry face, to find Asha. The small girl nudged past her and came to kneel before the bush baby. You shouldn't go taking things that don't belong to you, she told it. See, I'm familiar with what you stole, and I know something about it you don't. For the first time, the bush baby looked confused. Asha leaned closer. It's ticklish. Before the bush baby could stop her, the girl's tiny fingers sought out the tickle spots she knew well on Abeni's body. Like little wriggling worms, they burrowed between armpits, dug beneath rib cages and under its chin. Unable to contain itself, the bush baby opened its mouth wide and howled with laughter. No fair, no fair, it bellowed. Abeni didn't hesitate. She wasn't certain how this worked, but she'd felt it done to her. Bending down, she opened her mouth and drew in a long, deep breath. The bush baby froze, its mouth gaping wide as white tendrils of vapor rose from its throat. She inhaled again, pulling and pulling until there was nothing left, then fell back. The bush baby scrambled away, going to its knees and coughing fitfully. It turned to her with a grimace, and she noticed its ears. They were big and twitchy. She touched her own, now back to normal. Abeni gave a happy cry, hearing her own voice. Her arms came next, followed by her legs. Very quickly, the rest of her returned. Her dress was torn where her changed body had stretched it or fur had pushed through. But that hardly mattered. She rubbed her wonderful brown skin, glad to have it back. Hearing a whimpering, she looked up. The bush baby was itself again, a squat monkey cat-looking thing. Its big round eyes were filling with tears, and its bottom lip trembled. She didn't feel the least bit sorry for it. Opening its mouth wide, it shrieked so loud they all covered their ears. You might as well quit your crying, Zania growled. You know you can't steal the same body twice, and your magic doesn't work on spirits. The bush baby stopped, glaring at them ruefully. Oh, I wasn't crying, it said in its odd baby voice. I was calling. They followed its large eyes, which turned upward. Everywhere, the giant flowers were swaying, and their bulbs trembling. I don't like this, Naomi said. Abeni agreed, gripping her staff and pulling Asha beside her. Zania crouched low and growled warily. They watched as one by one the long green stems curved and dipped, their bulbous flower heads hanging low. Each of their petals slowly peeled back, opening to reveal. Abeni gasped. More bush babies. They yawned and stretched, coming awake and blinking sleepy eyes at the four girls. You're right, the first bush baby said. We can't steal a body that's already been tried, and we can't take your spirit bodies, but we can still take her. He would like that. It glared at Asha, ears twitching excitedly. The rest of you will just have to eat. Baby's hungry. It snarled, opening its mouth wider than ever before to show off rows of pointed teeth dripping with saliva. Every bush baby that had come awake fast did the same. Then as one, they came for them. Abeni swung her staff, the water buffalo charges coming to her at once, knocking aside the first bush baby that lunged for her. Beside her, Naomi squeaked in terror, sending off quills more by fright than on purpose. They caught bush babies in the face and arms, who leapt back, wailing in pain. Zania roared, slashing with her claws, but the bush babies were too many. If they remained here, Abeni knew they wouldn't last. They needed to get out of this garden. Now, lifting her staff above her head and sweeping wide circles with the form raining down the leaves, she made a clearing. Run, she yelled, pulling Asha with her. Zania Dania shifted into a panther, plunging through the tall flowers. She took the lead, slashing and snapping at anything that got too close. Abeni and the others followed, running through the path she created. Behind, the bush babies thundered after them. Abeni wielded her staff as best she could with one hand, her other holding tight to Asha. Some of the smaller bush babies, no bigger than cats, tried to drag the little girl away, their tiny teeth and claws biting and scratching. Abeni flung them away, swatting one so hard with her staff it went flying. Glancing up, she made out dozens more bush babies emerging from newly opened flowers, all jumping to the ground below. The things were coming from everywhere. They ran with wide open mouths, gnashing sharp teeth, and wailing their strange baby cries. Abeni felt relief when the girls finally broke free of the giant flowers. Maybe the bush babies would stay in their garden. But looking back, she found they hadn't slowed at all. The creatures poured out from the garden in a swirling mass of fur and claws, crashing through the dense bush to get to the fleeing figures. The 4 girls ran faster now, struggling to put some distance between themselves and their pursuers. Abeni suddenly felt the ground change beneath her. Looking down, she saw she was running on the edge of a deep crevice, hidden by thick trees and bush. She tried to keep her footing, but she was going too fast. It only took one wrong step, and she stumbled, losing her balance. Her fingers slipped from Asha's, and she pitched over the side. Her own scream filled her ears as she fell to the darkness below. This chapter is an excellent example of how our choices affect not only ourselves, but everyone that we're connected to. So when Abeni chose to touch that stem instead of just leaving, she got affected by the bush baby waking up and trying to steal her life from her. But not only that, now the bush baby wanted to kidnap Asha and take her to the witch priest. Now they did. One thing that came out of it is that they found out that the witch priest is actively hunting Asha, actively looking for Asha. And that's something that Auntie Asha in her old age would have known. But I don't think that's something that little girl Asha is actively aware of. She might know it on some level, but it's not something she's concerned about. So the bush baby brought that to their attention, that the witch priest is all over that forest area, all over where, all over everywhere, looking for people, things, spirits to join him in his quest for power, to rule over everybody and literally everything. And so although the bush babies didn't join the witch priest in the way that he has asked them to, they are aware that Asha would be a benefit to them. So why not kidnap her? Why not take advantage of this snatch up this little girl? And since they cannot have Abeni in the way that they attempted to have her, they'll just eat them. So not only Abeni got affected by her choices, but now all 4 of them are in danger. All 4 of them, oh my gosh, Asha could get kidnapped and forced to work for whatever the witch priest would do to her. And then Zania and Naomi and her are in danger. So we have to be conscious of how our choices affect not only us, but everybody connected to us. If we make a choice to make any move, those who love us, those who are connected to us, will be affected either in a good way or a not so good way. And now they're literally running for their lives because she did that little extra touching that stem instead of leaving it alone. So who knows what's going to happen now, but that's the end of this chapter. So until next chapter, see you then.